Last night, the first reports began to emerge. Today, we hoped to learn so much, but so far, no grand plan has been published, and ministerial resignations? Not yet, anyway. Is the centre holding fast? Is it too soon to say? The cabinet meeting in Downing Street has gone the distance. We were expecting to hear Theresa May address the nation at some point this evening, but not clear when exactly or whether she will at all. I'll speak to our very own Gary Gibbon in just a minute. But before that, here's his report on what feels like another momentous day on the long road toward Brexit.
Some cabinet ministers had to come in the back entrance to number 10 for the special meeting because of an environmentalist demo at the front gate. Nobody looked like they were thrilled at the agreement. But one pro-Brexit cabinet minister said, "We've got nowhere else to go." The lack of time to change strategy weighed on many, the minister said.
Who runs this country? We do!
Another demo round the front of Downing Street called on them to rise up and resign over the deal. It looks as though the government has won a UK-wide temporary customs arrangement that could come into force after the transition if there's no deal ready on the future relationship that prevents a hard Irish border. The EU has slapped terms on that, conforming to EU rules on competition and state aid as they change, and respecting minimum standards on the environment, labour laws and taxation. And the EU's insisted the UK can't just walk out whenever it likes. Unlike the rest of the UK, Northern Ireland looks like it'll be aligned to single market rules concerning goods and food and will obey the full Union Customs Code.
If she decides to go against herself, because on many, many occasions she has stood up in this very place and said that she will not break up the United Kingdom, there will be no difference between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. If she decides to go against all of that, then there will be consequences. Of course there will be consequences. And we could not, as unionists, support a deal that broke up the United Kingdom.
Earlier at question time, Jeremy Corbyn played on Brexiteers' fears that the temporary customs arrangement would be the beginning of something deep and permanent.
Can the Prime Minister confirm whether under her deal it will be the sovereign right of the UK Parliament to unilaterally withdraw from any backstop?
We don't want to be in a position where the European Union would find it comfortable to keep the United Kingdom in the backstop permanently, and that's why any backstop has to be temporary.
Two ministers who are known to have pondered leaving the government over that and other issues in the deal have not left yet. A united cabinet could help Theresa May with the Commons vote on the deal in a few weeks' time, but it will not guarantee victory.
It's a disaster, and it will never get through the House of Commons.
The Conservatives with the DUP at full strength have 327 votes. That's a majority of 7 past the critical 320 winning post. But Theresa May's ranks are depleted if the DUP's 10 MPs refuse to side with her. And even if she squeezed the Tory Brexiteer rebellion down to 25 MPs, she looks like losing around 7 pro-Remain Tory MPs on top of that. That would leave her needing 35 Labour MPs if she was to get a majority. And right now, only a few Labour MPs would even think of switching sides to help her out. How many do you think there will be in that lobby with you, same sort of school of thought as you, pro-Remain?
At the moment, maybe 10. This is changing. It's an evolving situation.
But together you'll do for her and this deal.
I think this deal at the moment, if everybody stands true to what they've publicly stated, the DUP, the ERG, and indeed my colleagues on my side of the argument, this deal has no chance.
The Unholy Alliance.
Oh, we're mates. We're mates.
We're mates. We served on the administration
Completely
committee.
different views of Europe.
But
you're both going to vote it down together.
Yeah.
Unholy alliances reflecting the unprecedented range of different scenarios rival factions are gaming.
This is the most unpredictable circumstance in modern politics that I can remember, and it is the most important issue of modern politics I can remember.
If Theresa May loses the vote, we could be heading for no deal crashing out of the EU, or no deal but with mini agreements reducing the disruption. Some Brexiteers would like that option. Other Brexiteers say they could still get a super-fast renegotiation of a more distant trade deal relationship. The Labour leadership would try at this point to stop any of those options with a general election. Quite a few Labour and some Tory MPs say this is when a second referendum should be called. Theresa May could simply call the Commons vote again on the same deal. Some think she could call it on a different, softer Brexit deal.
There is a better alternative, which is a free trade agreement based on the EU-Canada agreement, so-called Super Canada.
You haven't got the MPs in the House for that. There's about, at most, 80 of you, plus the DUP. It's a House of 650 people. How are you going to get that?
Well, I believe that most of the Conservative Party could actually unite behind Super Canada.
They're doing a jolly good job of disguising it.
I take your point.
There are people with totally different views who are coming together around the single issue that they find the Prime Minister's deal looks to them to be likely to be completely unacceptable.
And you're all rolling the dice on this moment of crisis, none of you knowing what number will come up.
Well, it's right that it is uncertain how this will work through, and I worry about that a great deal.
We trade with other countries in the world.
We go out with no deal.
We go out with no deal, and we trade with other countries in the world, and trade very successfully with other countries in the world.
And we probably have a different Prime Minister.
And we may well, that's up to the Conservative Party, not up to us. But,
you might have contributed very heavily.
We may have.
In the Commons, a whiff of menace even before the deal was seen.
Is the Prime Minister aware that if the media reports about the EU agreement are in any way accurate, you are not delivering the Brexit people voted for, and today you will lose the support of many Conservative MPs and millions of voters across the country?
What we're doing is a deal that delivers on that vote, but in doing so protects jobs, protects the integrity of our United Kingdom and protects the security of people in this country.
Tonight, members of the pro-Brexit ERG group of Tory MPs have said they may call for their supporters to put in letters demanding a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister, adding to pressure just when you thought it couldn't get more intense.
And Gary Gibbon is with me now, and just a warning that the Prime Minister is likely to come out at some point while I'm talking to him, so we'll break to her the moment we have that. Gary, what's taken so much time?
The ministers who are in that room, many of them have grave forebodings about what they're about to sign up to potentially anyway, but they also know this is a moment of maximum power. This is the moment when they can put some sort of throttle on the whole proceedings and maybe even pull back some wording or anything. The moment Theresa May walks out to the microphone that has been sitting there, lonely microphone in Downing Street all afternoon, and says, they're all behind me, that's it. The moment of influence is severely reduced. What will be really interesting to see as this meeting has gone on for an unusually long amount of time is whether she is able to say that when she comes out to the microphone and say that the Cabinet is behind me. She might end up saying something along the lines of, we are continuing to look at this, and then meetings that are meant to be made, statements that are meant to be made, might have to be paused even longer. What we do know is that some Cabinet Ministers who are extremely uncomfortable about this agreement are also extremely uncomfortable about no deal. One of them I've been talking to referred to it as looking to him pretty much like a bit of a calamity. There is a sense in which some of these ministers feel trapped, so they are using this moment of maximum power to make sure they hope that we don't go to no deal, but perhaps they're in there trying to tweak the deal that's in front of them.
What more, if anything, do we know about the deal, if it is a deal?
We don't absolutely categorically know anything, but there have been rumours swirling all day. Well, the things we absolutely know are that what has long been in there about citizenship, the money that Britain's going to carry on paying in, how the transition works. The interesting stuff is on the temporary customs arrangement, the UK-wide arrangement, which the government has been asking for to try and make sure that the EU's preferred idea, Northern Ireland staying in the single market in the customs union when the rest of the UK leaves, so that is not what we revert to if there is no deal done. On that, I think there is a sense swirling around that customs union is looking to, temporary customs arrangements, is looking to some people like the backbone, the spine of an actual future relationship. Theresa May is taking us somewhere much closer to Europe than her original rhetoric might have suggested.
Gary, stay with us. We'll come back to you after the Prime Minister has spoken. We're waiting for her to come out in Downing Street any moment now. But for the moment, I am joined by three Conservatives, which is a rare experience. The Conservative Party must, after all, be looking into its soul tonight and deciding what it wants for itself, for the country. Handle this badly, and the country may take that choice away from them. I'm joined now by these three Conservative MPs who all have different takes on the Brexit plan. Heidi Allen, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nicky Morgan, you're all very welcome. Thank you very much indeed. Nicky Morgan, what do you think's happening? Do you know people in there who may be holding the line in some way?
Well, look, I think what's happening actually is a good thing. First, I would say that although we have different opinions, I think actually we have maintained a remarkable civility and determined to do that throughout this process. What's happening is what we should have in the cabinet government, which is a good, long discussion on an issue of monumental importance to this country. I think if we'd had a sort of an hour-and-a-half meeting and a rubber stamp of the deal, then actually cabinet ministers would not have done their best for the country. And all of this, we all believe that our particular views are in the national interest, and that's what we're going to see played out over the next few weeks.
Heidi Allen, don't you think it's perhaps rather extraordinary that in trying to forge a deal that would please both Nicky Morgan and you, she may have alienated both of you?
Well, because achieving that for anybody would almost be nigh impossible anyway. I think of anybody who's likely to manage that, it would be Theresa May, and she's tried very hard, but in there lies the difficulty. And I have to say it, as much as, of course, all of us have in common that we want our country and the economic success of the country to come first, we do have very, very different views on this. And the fact that a cabinet meeting at this 11th hour is going on for so long tells you just how far that bridge was still, and that gap still to be bridged. And I have to say, I'm not sure what's going to come out of it at all. And even if a sweetness and harmony and white doves come out of number 10 later, when that withdrawal agreement, it's not a deal for our economic future, it's a withdrawal agreement, a framework, will that get through Parliament? And my sense is, no matter what, it still won't.
I'll put it to you, Jacob Rees-Mogg. She will not face a leadership challenge, and there will not be a rebellion in Downing Street that produces resignations. True?
I don't know what will happen in terms of resignations in Downing Street, but I agree with Heidi that I think it is highly unlikely that the deal, if it is based on what we've heard so far, will get through Parliament. I think it will face overwhelming opposition.
And now you're an honest man. I can ask you this question.
Do my best.
Do you know whether there are MPs putting in letters now, as they have to if they wish to see a challenge? Is that happening?
Some people have told me during the course of the day that they are intending to write letters, but I do not know how many, and I cannot tell you whether people who've said that they will have actually gone on to do so.
Give us a sense of the sum.
I really don't know. The only person who knows is Sir Graham Brady, who is a man of the greatest discretion. If I knew, I would tell you, but I really don't know.
Have you popped one in?
I have not written a letter, no.
So
have you, Nicky? So, what's your bottom line tonight that will decide your entire approach to the further Brexit deliberations?
Well, I listened very carefully to Mr Gibbons' report, and what he was saying, that what is being proposed at the moment does not meet what the Prime Minister said in her earlier statements. And that is my greatest criticism of what I've heard so far, is it doesn't meet what the Prime Minister promised or what we said in our manifesto. Therefore, we must be out of the customs union, which was a manifesto commitment. We must maintain the integrity of the United Kingdom, which is a commitment all Conservatives and Unionists make, and we must not pay £39 billion for nothing. So those are the three key areas.
Those three key areas are not on the table tonight, are they, Heidi Allen?
Well, we don't know, and that is the truth of it. I mean, there's nothing like a bit of good news broadcasting, because we can all pontificate and guess about it. We don't know. But certainly, for those of us that are hedging our bets hoping for this, there are as many people who are hoping for that, and therein lies the problem, I think.
But you know, if you vote this down, you're risking a no deal.
Or actually, what it would say is that Parliament, and Nicky makes this point often, and she is right, it would be a poor reflection of our competence as MPs, that we have failed. But that, for me, would bring us back to one single outcome, and no matter which way you work through the logic channels of possibilities, it would have to go back to the people to make that decision. Unless, of course, the Prime Minister is brave enough to say, you know what, this has all been a terrible mistake, we should stay.
It's on the table. Second referendum?
Well, a second referendum begets a third referendum. That this issue was settled by the first referendum, people voted to leave, and in the general election...
Jacob Rees-Mogg, you're more intellectually sound than that. These people did not know the detail of what the deal would be. Now we will know. Well, surely they deserve to be asked.
If I complete what I was saying, in the general election, both the Labour Party and the Conservatives committed to implementing the result. And before an election, people never know precisely what is going to happen. People vote on expectations, on reasonable expectations, or indeed on propaganda. And that result is nonetheless authoritative. And I think the problem with a loser's vote, a second referendum by people who lost the first time, is why don't you then have a third? At what point do you stop? And I think this result needs to be implemented unless somebody can win a general election on a mandate to reverse it. That, I think, would be the only democratically legitimate way to do it.
Nicky Morgan, second referendum?
No, I don't support a second referendum. This is where Heidi and I agree on many things about this, but this is where we don't agree. We have a representative parliamentary democracy in this country. There were 650 of us elected in 2017 who now need to step up to the plate, look at the deal once the Cabinet have hopefully supported it tonight, to look at the deal. There'll be a lot of analysis going on and to ask ourselves whether this is something that we can vote for and is in the country's national interest. That is the test, and I have some sympathy with the idea that, what would we ask people about? It would take a long time and everything else. It's now down to MPs. That's what we are elected to do. We need to do our job.
So if you voted down, it is a no deal?
I hope very much that there will be a deal that I am able to support. For me, it's about jobs and security and my constituents' economic security.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, no deal still better than a bad deal?
I agree with what the Prime Minister said. It is a huge opportunity for this country to make its own laws, its own regulation, keep its own money, control its own borders, set its own trade deals, lower the cost of food, clothing and footwear to the benefit of the least well-off in society. This is what we get with a clean Brexit.
Except that if people lose their jobs in the meantime, they won't even care about the price because they won't be able to afford any of that, and that is the huge
But they won't
risk.
lose their jobs. Leaving the European Union is escaping from a failing economic model. It is essential that we do it, and the sooner we do it, the better.
Can I pause you there? I hate to leave you coatless in the cold, but could you wait with us just for a few minutes to see what she says? Let's go now to Downing Street. Not the Prime Minister, but Krishnan Gurumurthy. Krishnan?
Nothing, John. There's a door over there and we're waiting for it to open. Theresa May is due to come out sometime. Any time. You listen to Downing Street aides and they say she's going to be out in 10 minutes. I think that was more than 10 minutes ago, to be perfectly honest. But she's going to come out and tell us what the result of this cabinet meeting is. It's been going on for over 5 hours. And just think about the choreography of today having gone really quite badly wrong. This cabinet meeting was supposed to be done and dusted. There was then going to be a press conference. The deal was going to be published in some form. And there was fury at that. Many MPs on all sides of the House were angry at not being consulted. The press conference had to be cancelled. But the Prime Minister, who is occupying something of a vacuum in terms of owning this argument, has to appear before the nation and tell us what is going on. So we're now told she will come out and say something to us. We've no idea whether she'll take any questions about what exactly is in the deal. And here we are. You're in the absurd position of sitting there with a bunch of Conservative MPs who don't know what they are actually talking about, literally. So that's where we are. I don't know whether we could go to Matt Fry briefly in Brussels while we wait for this. As soon as that door opens, we'll of course cut back to it. But if we can go to Matt, let's see what did they make of this, Matt, and the way we're handling it. There she is. Door's open, actually.
Well, they're looking at the same. They're looking at the same door, Krish. They're looking at the very same door.
The cabinet has just had a long, detailed and impassioned debate on the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration on our future relationship with the European Union. These documents were the result of thousands of hours of hard negotiation by UK officials and many, many meetings which I and other ministers held with our EU counterparts. I firmly believe that the draft withdrawal agreement was the best that could be negotiated, and it was for the Cabinet to decide whether to move on in the talks. The choices before us were difficult, particularly in relation to the Northern Ireland backstop, but the collective decision of Cabinet was that the government should agree the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration. This is a decisive step which enables us to move on and finalise the deal in the days ahead. These decisions were not taken lightly, but I believe it is a decision that is firmly in the national interest. When you strip away the detail, the choice before us is clear. This deal, which delivers on the vote of the referendum, which brings back control of our money, laws and borders, ends free movement, protects jobs, security and our union, or leave with no deal or no Brexit at all. I know that there will be difficult days ahead. This is a decision which will come under intense scrutiny, and that is entirely as it should be and entirely understandable. But the choice was this deal, which enables us to take back control and to build a brighter future for our country, or going back to square one, with more division, more uncertainty, and a failure to deliver on the referendum. It's my job as Prime Minister to explain the decisions that the government has taken, and I stand ready to do that, beginning tomorrow with a statement in Parliament. But if I may end by just saying this, I believe that what I owe to this country is to take decisions that are in the national interest. And I firmly believe, with my head and my heart, that this is a decision which is in the best interests of our entire United Kingdom.
What happens if Parliament says no? Well, there we are. We're actually not much better off after that, beyond saying that the Cabinet has agreed, as we expected, to press on with the Prime Minister's plan. Of course, she came out and didn't tell us what the draft agreement is. So we still have to only assume that the leaks that have mostly come out from Ireland are correct, and that they are based on this sort of compromise on the backstop of the whole of the United Kingdom being in the customs union. The Prime Minister will brief Parliament on the detail of the deal tomorrow, so she didn't want to tell us too much tonight, and nor do we know whether the Cabinet really is unanimous and united on this, or whether anybody has resigned. What we're expecting over the next few minutes is for the Cabinet to come out and leave, and so we shall try and find out a little bit more from them as they come out. But perhaps we should now go to Matt Fry and see what the story is in Brussels, and if any more goes on here in Downing Street or Cabinet Ministers come out and tell us any more, we'll be right back to you. Matt.
Well, as I told you earlier, Christian, they were waiting for white smoke here in Brussels. I guess they just got a very sort of thin version of that white smoke. And here's the extraordinary thing. The EU ambassadors of the 27 remaining EU members have been sitting in that building behind me in the Commission all afternoon while Theresa May has been hosting her cabinet meeting, together with Michel Barnier and his assistant Sabine Vaillant. And they've been literally sitting on top or next to the boxes that contain the document that they haven't been allowed to read or wanted to read in case there wasn't going to be any white smoke. Because why would you sift through 400 pages of this stuff if you didn't absolutely have to do so? So I'm guessing that, it's dinner time here in Brussels, it's 8 o'clock in the evening, that they're going to have a very long night because they'll have to start reading those pages now, or perhaps they'll defer until tomorrow morning, to see what's actually in there so that these ambassadors can brief their heads of government in their respective capitals about whether this thing does what it says on the tin. Now, they also know here, of course, that this is only the first hurdle, that, the cabinet approval is the very first hurdle. There's the other hurdle to get across, the perhaps much more difficult one, and that is the vote in Parliament. So there's a sort of almighty, sigh of relief up to a point, but also exasperation that this process will just go on and on until Christmas and perhaps even longer. So all the MEPs who are normally here in Brussels were in Strasbourg today, sitting in a session, and one of them, a German MEP, the CDU member Elmar Brok, put his finger on it when he said he was rather impatient with the whole process. Listen.
I think the people are losing patience here. And we understand the difficult situation the Prime Minister has, because she has a divided government, she has a divided party, she has a divided parliament, but that is not our problem. The 27 member countries are united, the Commission and the Parliament are united, and I think we would not like to become the victims of personal fights in the British government and in British politics.
One thing they've really learned here in the last 2 years is to take everything that comes from London with a huge pinch, a bucket of salt, because they know that whatever is decided here, with actually extraordinary discipline, message discipline, 27 nations talking through the one sort of almost godlike voice of Michel Barnier, they know that in London it's quite the opposite. So they're going to be patient here, but for now, if there is indeed genuine white smoke from London, there will be a sigh of relief and they can move on to the next step. As will I. John.
Well, now, Gary, deconstruct it for us.
Well, it was interesting that we didn't hear the word unanimous there when Theresa May was talking about the Cabinet. It might just be that it wasn't put in, but
It might be that someone's resigned. I think if they did resign, they'd probably want to do a Michael Heseltine and strop down the street, and we would have seen them. I think another thing that was interesting there, though, was that broadly she seems to have got what she wanted. This was, as Matt was just saying, the hurdle she needed to get over. We also heard some of the selling of the deal, how she's selling the deal. We got a glimpse of that, of course, in the document that leaked last week, and she's being true to pretty big chunks of it, and adding in this line that this isn't just about deal or no deal. That was the decisive choice that was originally going to be put in public. She's saying the other choice is you could get no Brexit at all. This threat of a second referendum, she's trying to raise that to increase her chances of getting this deal through.
Right, let me turn then back to our three MPs, Nicky Morgan, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Heidi Allen. My deal, no deal, or no Brexit? Nicky.
Well, I think having a deal is incredibly important in the national interest. Of course, it's quite right that the Prime Minister is going to come to Parliament tomorrow morning. There was uproar today when it would appear that she was going to give a press conference before she spoke to Parliament, and that's not going to happen. She's going to come to us. That's when we will get the details and can start making those critical decisions.
So which of those three will it be?
For me personally, I hope very much, as I say, that I will be able to support her deal. We need to do the deal and get on with talking about everything else the country wants us to talk about.
Heidi Allen?
So like Nicky, need to see what it says. I can't imagine, based on the rumours and some of the core ingredients of the deal, if you like, that it will be good enough. And on that basis, I would go for no Brexit, but I'm willing to wait and see what happens tomorrow.
Fascinating. Jacob Rees-Mogg.
On what we know of the proposed deal of the Prime Minister, it does not meet her previous promises. It leaves us in the customs union, it divides up the United Kingdom, and it costs £39 billion for nothing. I would therefore vote for a clean Brexit to ensure that we leave properly, but I think that will merely show the failures of the government's negotiations. It could have got a better deal than this.
But what do you think will actually happen now after what you've heard tonight?
I would be surprised if her deal, assuming all the reports we've had so far are correct, will get through Parliament, and that I expect would lead to no deal.
Three Conservative MPs, three different views. I'm very grateful to all three of you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, Porrick O'Brien is in Newry. We have reporters all over the United Kingdom this evening. Kieran Jenkins is in Peterhead. Claire Fallon is in Doncaster. But first, let's go to Porrick O'Brien, who is in that terribly important sector of this whole argument, Northern Ireland, in Newry, near the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. The very crux of this issue. How will the deal manage the relationship between the two countries? It appears to be too much for the Democratic Unionist Party to stomach. They're preparing the ground to stop their support for the government. Porrick, it's you. Go for it.
Well, John, if our viewers have been holding their breath watching what's been happening outside Downing Street today, spare a thought for the people of Newry and particularly for the businesses of Newry. They have virtually been going blue for lack of oxygen, all eyes trained on Downing Street. As you said, the DUP become the crux of the issue here, and the bone of contention as far as they are concerned is whether these rumours prove true, that a draft agreement might involve some sort of different or deeper regulatory alignment between Northern Ireland and the European Union, even if it is on a temporary basis. As far as the DUP are concerned, that would be the thin end of the wedge in terms of possible isolation from the United Kingdom, which of course is a red line for them. As I said, we've been talking to senior business leaders here, and a very sort of palpable sense of worry and anxiety around what would come out of that cabinet meeting today, but now all eyes on Parliament. We've also been pounding the streets, talking to shoppers and small businesses to gauge how they feel about how the day is going to pan out. The challenge today, getting reaction from people in the border city of Newry to today's deal, is finding anyone on the high street from Newry.
We're from Channel 4 News in London.
No, we're from Dublin, so we're okay.
I know.
We'll come to the politics, but first woe betide the politician who puts a hard border between these Dubliners and their monthly shopping trip across the border.
So it really is, for you, it really is like a porous border, isn't it?
We are hoping that there's no hard border, but if there is, if they put bricks and steel up, I'd creep through a hedge.
The bone of contention has been the backstop, the insurance policy against a return to a hard border in a no-deal scenario. Today's draft agreement reportedly keeps the UK broadly aligned with the EU customs union for a limited time, with Northern Ireland maintaining an even deeper level of regulatory alignment. For some of those we spoke to today, cautious optimism. For most, unbridled pessimism.
She has her own government to back her, and see the DUP out the door. They're not getting what they want.
No, they're not. No.
Not at all. They're not
Theresa
getting
May is going to have a heart attack.
The DUP are against it, the Labour Party against it. So it looks like it'll be strangled at birth.
Bisto is being stockpiled because of the Brexit.
Yeah.
So my mum has sent me downtown to buy Bisto. Like she could probably she doesn't like the granules, you see.
For the DUP, special treatment for Northern Ireland, the first step on the road to the possible breakup of the union. One DUP MP described the deal as the UK getting a punishment beating from the EU. The Irish government sought to reassure unionists today.
The Good Friday Agreement will be protected, and that includes a recognition of the fact that we respect the territorial integrity of the United Kingdom and that we respect the principle of consent.
On both sides of the border this evening, eyes trained laser-like on Downing Street. The outcome will mean more on these streets than anywhere else.
Porrick O'Brien in Newry, and I'm now joined by Sammy Wilson, the DUP MP for Antrim East Antrim. And I'm wondering what you make of events. I mean, have you now left the Prime Minister's side, you 10?
Well, we have made it quite clear that the deal as we understand it at present, and I don't think it's going to get any better when we start reading the fine print, is not acceptable. It breaks all of the promises that the Prime Minister made, not just to us, but to the people of the United Kingdom in her manifesto commitment. She said she would bring us out of the customs union. She hasn't done that. She said she would bring us out of the single market. She hasn't done that. She said that she would make sure that the United Kingdom was not broken up. She hasn't done that either, because there's going to be separate arrangements for Northern Ireland, which will mean that Northern Ireland will be subject to EU regulations forever and a day. And that, of course, will then drive an economic wedge between Northern Ireland and GB, which is our main market, and also have constitutional implications. So, I mean, we have made it clear that if that was the road she went down, then she would not have our support in getting this Brexit arrangement through. And, you know, don't forget, the Prime Minister has had to depend upon our vote in 50% of the votes which have gone through the House of Commons.
Well, that's what I want to ask you, Sammy.
Relating to Brexit. So she needs our support, and she will not get it in this. And I suspect she'll not get it from a lot of her own backbenchers, both Leavers and Remainers, because she's broken promises to them as well.
But as of tonight, confidence in supply, which is the deal under which you support the government in Parliament, does it still stand?
Well, I mean, we are focusing first of all on the current situation. That is, how do we turn around the situation that has developed over this Brexit arrangement?
Well, have you got a time to go and see her?
We had a time tonight, and I think it was put off because the Cabinet ran on for so long. Fairly ominous, I would say. But it's Arlene Foster hopes to meet her sometime this evening.
Well, that's very interesting. I imagine that will not go down well in Downing Street. Thank you, Sammy Wilson, very much indeed. So let's now go to Scotland. No? Oh, we're going to Krishnan, over there in Downing Street.
Back in Downing Street, well, about 8 cabinet ministers have left the building so far, all refusing to say anything. It's quite bizarre. You shout at them and they just kind of pretend you're not there. So we're not going to get any more details. But what is the view from an area that voted for Brexit? Claire Fallon, our North of England correspondent, is in Doncaster in Yorkshire, which voted 69% to leave in the 2016 referendum. Claire.
Well, yeah, at the time of the referendum, it was a decisive vote in this town to leave the EU. As for where we are now, well, having spent the day talking to people here about how they feel, what they think, there was certainly one common theme that came through, because everyone we spoke to, frankly, regards what's going on as being a total mess. The Brexiteers we spoke to said that they're frustrated and confused. The Remainers we spoke to said that they're frustrated and confused. People frankly say that what they want is clarity right now, although very few had any confidence in the politicians who are meant to be leading us through all of this to deliver that. In Brexit Britain, the bunting's up. They voted leave, they got leave, but they don't seem all that chipper.
France owns the water in England. What's France doing owning our water? This is England, not France.
Kevin sells ornamental dogs and other things on Doncaster Market. He's as hard Brexit as they come. And you get the sense the Brexit it seems we're heading towards isn't exactly what he hoped for.
Listen, I've seen it all. I'm 49 years old, love. So automatically I want something better for my kids, and I think it should be England again. England, not European. England. Brexit 100%.
Do you agree with them?
Yeah.
Why?
Cause.
She's looking at the future, love.
Yeah. I'm only young, so yeah, I'm looking
She's
to the
looking
future.
at the future.
Yeah.
A couple of stalls down and a million miles away politically.
I wanted to remain because my grenades here used to cost me £5, right? Now my grenades cost me £10. And I've got to pass that price on to customer because they're from Holland.
To Martin, whether we're in the customs union or not, Brexit already means paying more for grenades, and he's staring down the barrel of a future he doesn't want.
We've dealt with Europe and had good trade deals for thousands of years. Why break away now? Oh, your Nigel Farage lot. Oh, yeah, the ideal of, not letting these foreigners in that are taking our jobs. That's a load of crap. The people that came here wanted to work. They wanted to work in the fields. They wanted to pick veg. They wanted to do the jobs.
But this is a town that voted leave.
I didn't.
Yes, Doncaster did choose out. But just like everything since the referendum, it's not that simple.
I'd have liked it to have been out completely. And it's going to drag on. That's not how I want it, because of uncertainty for the country, for businesses and everything else. So, that's it.
Well, of course, one of the issues in this whole argument is that both sides of this debate believe there's wind in their sails. And those people who are arguing for a second referendum, a people's vote, believe that there is a driving logic towards it. No one more vocally than Tony Blair, who has been saying since right after the referendum in 2016 that the people have the right to change their view. And remember, a lot of the opinion polls right now are suggesting precisely that Britain is still very divided, but now slightly on the Remain side. I caught up with the former Prime Minister earlier today, and I put it to him that the strength of Theresa May's proposed deal is that it takes away the risk of Britain crashing out of the European Union with no deal.
No deal is obviously a disaster. The deal the Prime Minister is putting forward is a deal, however, that's a bad deal, right? So what Parliament should do is reject that deal and then say, okay, we, Parliament, can't agree with this as the deal for Brexit, but you, the British people, have the final say. I think if Britain said, we want to reconsider, we need to get a final mandate from the people, I think Europe would also step forward at that point and make an offer to the British people, which will deal with many of the underlying grievances that gave rise to Brexit.
Do you know that because you've had conversations with Europe?
I've had a lot of conversations around Europe. I don't go into the detail of them or say who they were with.
But have you been running a sort of a parallel negotiation for Britain?
No, I can't. I'm not running a parallel negotiation. And by the way, when the government say, oh, Tony Blair's undermining the negotiating position of the government, there is no undermining this negotiating position. What they're trying to negotiate is unnegotiable. So it doesn't need me to point this out to the Europeans. So what I have been discussing with European leaders is if Parliament's blocked because Parliament rejects this deal, which it should do because it's a bad deal, would you then change your position on the offer you made to the British people 2.5 years ago? And their response is, yes, because the politics of Europe has also changed in this last 2.5 years.
Yeah, but isn't the lesson of the last 2.5 years that neither side will ever accept the other side winning?
Yeah, but
how long would the writ of another referendum last?
For a generation.
Why? I mean, we always say a generation and then we argue about it.
No, we didn't actually. In fact, If we end up voting to leave again, that's the end of it, for me at least. And I think I would speak for the vast majority of people who voted Remain. You know, you can't carry on having this argument.
Do you think Europe has got everything it wanted out of this negotiation? A negotiation it never wanted in the first place? I mean, have they won?
This is, again, completely ridiculous. It's a problem of the choice between the pointless and the painful. Now, the Brexiteers like Boris Johnson, they want the painful. Okay, they say, look, the short-term pain is worth going through to get to this nirvana of where we make our own rules and all of this stuff. I don't agree with that, but there it is. That is clear. My position is we should stay. The Theresa May position all the way through has been attempting to fudge this, and it just doesn't work. And this deal is not a deal that any member of Parliament would really vote for if they had if they were voting in a sort of dispassionate, rational way.
But don't you owe Jeremy Corbyn a pat on the back because his 6 tests cannot be met? You know,
well, I should pat him on the back for that.
Strategically, it's been quite clever, hasn't it? I mean, you know, you cannot get exactly the same benefits of the single market and the customs union. They're going to have to vote against this.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm sure he doesn't particularly want my pat in the back anyway, to be frank about it. But he actually stood up and said, look, we can't support this deal. We're going to vote it down. If it's voted down, we want a general election. We can't get a general election. This thing should go back to the people. If he got up and he said that now, you'd have the people's vote. And if he led that, if Labour got up and led that case now, I tell you, it would, first of all, it would mean that the vote happened. And secondly, it would actually put the Labour Party in a much stronger political position.
Is there not an element, though, in which people will find themselves listening to you, and because of your popularity being what it is, could find themselves thinking, well, whatever Tony Blair thinks, I think the opposite?
Yeah, but you know, people are going to have to, if people want to think like that, they can think like that.
Are you sure you're helping, intervening in this argument, is what I'm saying?
Well, you know, when I wasn't intervening, I didn't feel that helped either. I feel so passionately about this. I just think this is I think it's a catastrophic mistake for future generations. I can't, at this moment, stay silent and see the country just drift into this position of sort of powerlessness and relegate itself as a nation amongst the great nations of the world. It's just, I can't do it.
Well, first up, John, Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP made it clear they were never going to like this deal. Clearly they're not happy tonight. But how happy are the Scottish Conservatives? Because that's where it could have got sticky for them and for Theresa May. But I am hearing tonight that David Mundell, the Scottish Secretary, has not resigned. He was vulnerable, though, because the Scottish Conservatives have made some pretty cast-iron offers of support to these fishing communities. And if there is any hint in the withdrawal agreement of any backtracking on fishing rights, then things could get very toxic very quickly. Do you have high hopes for what Brexit might bring for fishing?
Yes.
And are they being delivered?
I don't know yet. I don't know.
After 2.5 years of not knowing, fishing communities will look at Theresa May's deal and they will decide if it's a promise kept or betrayal. What's freshest today then?
Everything is fresh today. We have the haddock, the most popular in Peterhead.
The UK would control its own waters, they were told, negotiate its own quotas.
We would like total control.
What were you promised?
There's so much foreign boats coming in and plundering our waters.
Does this agreement meet your needs?
David Mundell, the Scottish Secretary, one of those on resignation watch tonight. He was in Downing Street earlier along with a letter signed by all 13 Scottish Tory MPs. It said they couldn't support an agreement with the EU that would prevent the UK from independently negotiating access and quota shares. In other words, taking back control. He and Scottish Tory leader Ruth Davidson have already said they couldn't support any deal that meant a different status for Northern Ireland. On both fronts, if they're true to their word, will they stay in their jobs? Will their MPs vote against the government? Scotland's First Minister, angered not to have been consulted by the Prime Minister before today's Cabinet meeting, said any special deal for Northern Ireland should come Scotland's way too.
This, from what I know of it, is not a good deal for Scotland. It would take Scotland out of the single market, which would be bad enough in and of itself, but it would do so while leaving us competing for investment and jobs with Northern Ireland that would effectively be staying in the single market. That would be the worst of all possible worlds.
We'd have control
of the fishing industry. Yeah.
That's what you were promised?
Yeah.
Is that going to happen?
No.
In Peterhead, some were sensing a rotten deal if the UK were not to leave the common fisheries policy in December 2020, as Theresa May vowed. How would you remember Theresa May if she went back on her word on this?
I would never forgive her. She would remember to have been a backstabber, more or less. Not promising, not keeping up her promise, not keeping up her word.
As they wait here, as everywhere, for the meat on the bones, careers and reputations are on hold.
Kieran Jenkins in Peterhead. Let's have the last word from our political editor, Gary Gibbon. Gary?
All 585 pages have literally just this second gone online, so that's your evening sorted. And I wish I could tell you something from them. What I can tell you is that when we asked Downing Street about that cabinet meeting and have there been any resignations, back came the mordant reply, not yet. It could be black humour, it could be having had their fingers burnt in Chequers when it looked like the whole cabinet was together and then people slipped out a bit later. The Prime Minister, of course, said when we heard her come out of number 10 earlier, there will be difficult days ahead. She is not wrong there. Before she even gets to the cataclysmic, potentially vote on all of this in the House of Commons, it does look as though more letters are going in to the chairman of the 1922 committee asking for a vote of no confidence in her. That part of the party has always held back from actually the organised part of it going for that vote because they thought they'd lose it. But my goodness, what an extraordinary thing to be swirling round at a time like this.